Anchors up, sells at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing pretty well, Jared. How are you doing today?
I'm not going to complain. I am, however, going to conduct a tradition, which is new, but good, and always a little bit messy. It's a new tradition.
Just like our episodes.
Ha! It's funny because it's true. Remember when we used to edit these? I know.
We did?
Hey, well, I did. Good episode art. Thanks. I used to edit them. Then I stopped because I said to Kyle, you know, Kyle, if we're going to start, and we are, by the way, Kyle, we're doing 2 episodes this week.
We are.
Just tune in on Wednesday when we release the second episode. Kyle, what is the second episode? Let's just totally derail whatever I was saying. It doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh, Jared, you're so derailing this. Let me look here real quick. Today's episode, we are going to be doing the BigTen Preview. And so I guess you can guess what the next episode is.
Is it a national preview?
I'll give everyone 2 seconds, or Jared can just flat out say it. Yes, it's the national preview then.
All right, doing the national preview on Wednesday. We're doing the BigTen Preview today. We're going to do some overs. We're going to do some unders. We're going to talk some shit. I'm going to say this right off the top. We're not going to go super in depth on Ohio State. This is an Ohio State podcast. If you are tuning into this as someone who is a casual fan of Ohio State, maybe you check out during the summer and then you pop back in August. No, we're all busy adults, no judgment. But if that's something you do and you're looking for like an Ohio State preview, or if you're from an outside fan base looking for like an Ohio State preview, we did an entire episode. It's called an Ohio State preview for casual fans and for outside fans, where we assume you knew nothing about Ohio State coming in and did a preview from there. So if you're coming in here looking for Ohio State fans' perspective on Ohio State, you're not really going to get it. We're not going to waste a bunch of time talking about Ohio State this episode. Kyle.
Well, let's get right into it then.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
Before we get into the meat of it, just quick thing, as I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, but we're just going to go ahead and get it out of the way here. Blocko's been announced here. For those who haven't found out, it is Cody Simon, one of the guys that we thought was in the runnings to get the Blocko jersey. So couldn't happen to a better guy.
Yeah, he's one of the oldest guys on the team. He's a guy who fought back from injuries. He's in the exact mold of someone who you would expect to get the Blocko.
Exactly. And likewise, as for the captains for this year, Cody Simon, Jack Sawyer on the defense, Emeka Buka, and Trevion Henderson on the offense. And those are your 4 captains for this year.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just quick appreciation to Ryan Day for making the captainship special again and not having there be like 6 or 7 or 8 captains like there was under Urban Meyer.
Yep. All right. Let's get into the Big Ten. Big Ten welcomes 4 additional members to the 2024 season here.
Wild,
so the Big Ten is up to 18 teams for now. Yes.
For now. We're not going to go down this path because I'd talk about it for 30 minutes or more. I think the magical number is 24 or 26, but hey, we're not going to go down that path right now.
Yep. All right. Which team do you want to start with? We got a lot here, so we're going to spend just a tiny bit of time with each one here. But yeah, where would you like to start?
Let's start at the bottom. Let's start at the bottom. Let's work our way up.
All right.
Also, one last. We've done a couple. One real quick last thing. Shout out to Pick 6 Preview, who we lean on heavily when we do these preview shows, both the Big Ten preview and the national preview. Kyle and I have been poring over the Pick Six preview guide. Pick Six preview. Is it pick6previews.com, Kyle? It's my favorite like preseason guide. Is that the correct website? pick6previews.com. So just shout out to them. Yeah. This episode unofficially brought to you by Pick Six Previews. Very unofficially. Very, very, very unofficially. All right. Indiana, Kyle, I'd say there's 4 teams at the bottom. We're not doing a tier list today. We like our tier list. We're not doing our tier list today. But if we were, whatever the bottom tier would be, would contain Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois. Do you disagree? Or would you add Michigan State to that? Or would you not include a team in that?
Maybe. You said Indiana and who else?
Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois are the bottom tier teams.
For this season, you're saying?
Yes. Kyle, we're previewing the 2024 season. We're officially in 2024 mode, previewing the 2024 season. Okay,
I may disagree.
Good. It makes for a better podcast when you disagree. Why do you disagree?
All right, Indiana. Let's just start with Indiana. We'll get to the other teams here.
We'll come back.
Last year, Indiana was 5-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten. One trend that I see with the Big Ten in general here, awful out of conference scheduling here.
Yeah.
Looking at the out of conference for Indiana, FIU, Western Illinois, and Charlotte. All right. There's potentially 3 wins there for Indiana, and they're gonna need these wins here. I predict Indiana to go 6-6 this year. They get their 3 out of conference games and pick up 3 more in season here.
Okay. So the over under for Indiana this year is 5.5. You're taking the over.
So I'll take the over. I will take the over for Indiana. Yep. Because I think there are worse teams in the Big Ten.
I agree with that sentiment. Indiana. I don't know that there's 4 worse teams in the Big Ten.
Well, the good thing is that Indiana plays the 3 teams that are worse than them. And
it's not a good thing unless you win them. Listen, they have a new head coach. I don't want to pronounce his name in Sloopcast fashion. Kurt Signetti. I'm gonna go Italian with it. I don't know if he's Italian or not. He is from James Madison. He brings 17 via the transfer portal, 17 James Madison players with him from Indiana, from James Madison to Indiana. That being said, Indiana lost 35 players. 35 players to the transfer portal.
That is a lot, but typically when you do see a coach gone, especially in recent years, you see a mass exodus.
Yeah, but you lost. I mean, and I don't know, it might be generous to call Indiana players Big Ten players, but you lost 35 Big Ten players and you replaced them with 17 Sun Belt players. And by the way, when I say Sun Belt players, James Madison just got to the FBS. Yeah. So it might be generous to even call these players Sun Belt players.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they, especially on the defensive side, Kyle, especially on the defensive side, are a mess. They are a mess defensively. I'm sorry, I disagree. I'm going to go under 5.5. Looking at the Pick Six Preview Big Ten unit ranks. Indiana on the defensive line is 18th. As Kyle pointed out, that is out of 18. Their linebackers
that's not good.
are ranked 18th. Again, that is out of 18. Now, Kyle, their defensive backs are also 18th. All three defensive position groups, they're ranked
not good.
Dead last. Now, if you look over to their offensive side, I mean, it's better. In that they aren't all dead last. In fact, none of them are dead last, which is, that's saying something, right? Quarterback 14, running backs 15, wide receiver / tight end. By the way, don't like that those are combined, but whatever. 12th, offensive line 15th. Their best position group is wide receiver / tight end, where they are ranked 12th.
All right, so you got Indiana under. You got Indiana under then, right?
I do.
5.5?
I do.
All right. Do you want to go with the order that you have here, or do you
for the sake of simplicity, let's do that. This is, by the way, the order in here is the it's the Pick Six Preview order reversed. So if you look at the Pick Six Preview Big Ten rankings, they have Indiana and Purdue tied for last.
Gotcha. Well,
so
I do agree with them. I do agree with them that Purdue is the worst. So,
no, that's not what they said. They said Purdue was tied for worst.
But I got Purdue. I got Purdue being dead last in the Big Ten here. So, schedule does not help them.
No,
they're 3 out of conference games, which, by the way, is probably some of the better ones that we're going to talk about here. But they play Indiana State, Notre Dame, and at Oregon State.
Oregon State should be noted, was a pretty like a surprisingly decent team last year. Yeah. They're not going to be that team this year.
No, they're not. They're not. And Purdue has some tough games. They have some tough games this year.
I agree with you in that Purdue is going to look just as bad, if not worse, than Indiana, looking at the record at the end of the season.
Yeah. So
I actually think that Purdue's a better football team than Indiana, personally, but because their schedule is their schedule, they're not going to, at the end of the season, look better than Indiana. Yeah. But I think they have superior talent for what it's worth.
Yeah. Well, one of those wins with Indiana was against Purdue here, and because I do think Purdue is the worst. Looking at the schedule here, last year they went 4-8, 3-6 in the Big Ten. This year, Jared?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to get a single win in the Big Ten. This is my projection. They're going to go 0-9, finish the season 1-11.
I think they beat Illinois. I think they can beat Northwestern. I think they will beat Northwestern.
I'd give the edge to Illinois. It is over at Illinois. Purdue and Northwestern, I was kind of a toss-up for me there. And really those were like the only 2 wins I could potentially see in the Big Ten, but I ended up not giving it to Purdue. So 4.5, yeah, I'll easily take the under for that.
I'm going over. I think of the bottom 4 teams, and I do think that it's a bottom 4, although Michigan State could prove me wrong, depending upon how bad they are. But I'm going to say it's a bottom 4 teams, and I actually think Purdue's the best team of the bottom 4. Again, that's not to say that their record will show that, because they do have a considerably tougher schedule than the other bottom 4 teams. So I think maybe Kyle and I, maybe our mix up here is, are we predicting the results, or are we talking about the actual quality of the team? Because again, of the bottom 4 teams, I think Purdue's the best team there, but they have to play Ohio State and Penn State and Oregon and Wisconsin and Nebraska and Notre Dame. Like they just have they have a nasty schedule.
They do. But yeah, I think Purdue might have the better team overall, but yeah, their schedule will not.
So over-unders at 4.5.
So.
They can beat Indiana State. They will beat Indiana State. Though I think they beat Indiana. I think they can beat Michigan State. So let me just hold off on Michigan State for right now. I think they beat Northwestern. I think they beat Illinois. And I think between Michigan State and Oregon State, you have a maybe hanging out there. And if they just beat one of those teams, that puts them to 5 wins, which gets me the over.
Yeah, I just got their sole win being their home opener there. I don't see them going to Oregon State, getting a win, to Illinois to get a win, to Michigan State, to Indiana. I don't see them getting wins there. The only potential one I could see is maybe Kyle, home to Northwestern.
Can we agree to disagree? We're talking way too much about Purdue. We are.
All right, Northwestern, we have 4.5. 4.5 of the over and under. I think this is a good number. But yeah, it's I don't see the 4.5 here for Northwestern. So I take the under. Miami of Ohio, Duke, Eastern Illinois is their out of conference there. I think they'll get 2 of those 3 there. Yep. 2-1 in there. But what did I have here? So I had here they get a win over Miami of Ohio, Eastern Illinois, and pick up a win against Purdue. So I have Northwestern going 3-9 this year. After an amazing turnaround last year where they went 8-5.
Yeah.
I do think they take a couple of steps backwards this year.
Yeah, Dave Braun returns after like a really surprising 8-5 season in 2023 after all of their preseason, off-season issues that they had. But the talent at North, they lost either via graduation, the transfer portal. They lost a ton of players and they had a pretty small recruiting class. They didn't bring in many guys via the portal. I think Northwestern's going to be bad. I agree with you. I'm going under on 4.5.
Yep. All right. Nice and quick. That's what I like. Illinois was 5-7 last year.
Can you believe this is Brent Bielema's 4th year at Illinois? It does not feel like that, does it?
It does not. But he's got to do a little bit better here if his seat doesn't. Well, I really don't know if his seat will actually get hotter.
I don't know what type of expectations they have at Illinois, and if they're expecting this team to be good this year, they're wrong. Now, Brett Bielema entering his 4th year, a lack of talent reflects on him at this point. It's not, you know what I'm saying. But yeah, they actually had like some pretty, like they didn't have a good team last year, but they did have some good players last year. They actually really had some good players last year, but they're all gone.
Really good, I'm forgetting what his name is. That really good, was it defensive tackle?
Yeah, they had 2 really good defensive tackles. Yeah. Really good defensive back. I'm blanking on names at the moment. But they had several really good wide receivers, some good impactful players. But they're all gone. They didn't really replace them. They didn't replace them at all. I think that Illinois is definitely in the running for worst team. Their schedule is not as bad.
Yep, their schedule is going to help them. Eastern Illinois, Kansas, Central Michigan, all at home. I think they can win those 3. Kansas would be tougher, but I think Illinois can get those 3 wins there. I
feel like they lose one of them. I don't know which one, but I just don't see this Illinois team winning 3 in a row.
And I predict them to get 3 more along the way there. I got them beating Purdue, Sparty, and Northwestern here to go 6-6. 1 win better than last year.
Yeah, I'm not nearly that optimistic. I'm going to go under. I think they beat. Okay. I think in the first 3 games, I think they win 2 of them. I think they drop 1 of them. I think they lose to Purdue. A bunch of other games that they're obviously going to lose. And then I think they actually, like Northwestern feels like a 50-50. But even at that point, even if they win it, I'm still only giving them 4 games. I'm going hard under here.
All right, that's fine. All right, so those were the bottom 4 teams from what you have here.
Michigan State is debatably in that tier.
Before we get into Michigan State, we're going to take our first quick ad break here. If you want to avoid these ad breaks, head on over to thesloopcast.com where you can find all of our links, including a link to become a patron over at patreon.thesloopcast.com. To avoid these ads, head on over there, become a member, and we'll take a quick break and be right back.
And we're back.
All right. Sparty, Jared.
Sparty
last year went 4-8.
Yeah.
2-7 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I got them doing pretty much the same. I got them 4-8. They do have a favorable out of conference FAU, TV A&M, which a lot of people will be like, who?
Listen, you said PV A&M, and I came up with an answer in my head, but I'm not going to say it out loud.
Yeah, that is a FCS for those questioning, and they do go on the road to Boston College.
Is that Prairie View?
Yeah.
Is it really?
I actually have Sparty winning all 3 of their out of conference games, but only getting 1 win in conference here, and that's against Purdue. So 3 out of conference, 1
too hard.
1 in conference. I got Sparty going 4-8, 1-8 in the Big Ten this year.
I agree with you enough.
It's a rebuilding season for Sparty.
Yeah, I for each of these teams, and I'm not necessarily like just reading the storylines verbatim, but for each of these teams, I have a 1-sentence storyline written. But I'm going to read it verbatim this time because I pointed it out. I wrote, Michigan State makes an excellent hire bringing in Oregon State head coach Jonathan Smith, but he's without 33 transfer portal departures and in what can only be called a rebuilding season.
Yep.
That's the storyline for Michigan State this year. It's just get better as a team, show everyone you're competent, show the recruits that you're competent, try and bring in some talent, try and get this ball rolling in 2 or 3 years. That's Michigan State right now.
Their middle of the schedule is tough.
Yeah.
Ohio State, at Oregon, Iowa, at Michigan.
They do get the bye week in between Oregon and Iowa.
They do, but...
Everyone has 2 bye weeks this year, by the way. Just tossing that out.
All right, Jared's Golden Gophers.
Not my Golden Gophers.
They went 6-7 last year. 6-7, but their schedule in conference does not... I don't like who they play in conference. I think they're a better team than... In the end, I think they're going to be a better team than what their record ultimately shows. Their out of conference is North Carolina, Rhode Island, which is an FCS, and Nevada.
Yeah,
which I got them winning 2 of those 3.
I think that's fair.
And just like Michigan State, I think I do not like their schedule in conference. They play a lot of tough teams, some of them on the road. That's maybe 50-50, but being on the road kind of give the favor to the home team there. I got Minnesota only winning 1 game in conference here.
Oh, in conference. I'm like, didn't you already give them 2? Okay, never mind.
In Illinois, against Illinois. So I got them going I got them going 3-9, 1-8
The thing is that Illinois is the only gimme on their Big Ten schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Could they beat Rutgers? Sure. Could they beat Maryland? Sure. Could they beat UCLA? Sure. But the only gimme in their Big Ten schedule is Illinois. I'm going to go under. PJ Fleck entering his 8th year and I would say, is on the hot seat at this point. He does not have a lot of talent on this year's rendition of the Golden Gophers. He has Darius Taylor at running back, who was a freshman last year, is a very good running back. They have Daniel Jackson at wide receiver, and they have a really veteran O-line group. Like that should be stated as well. They do have a really veteran offensive line group, including an excellent offensive tackle. But I think that they're going to struggle pretty badly talent-wise, especially on the defense when they play better teams.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to UCLA, the first new member of the Big Ten that we get to talk about here.
Yeah.
Last year they went 8-5 under Chip Kelly. 4-5 in the Pac-12, and yeah, I definitely think they're going to see a step back, especially being in the Big Ten here. They're not going to get 4 wins in the Big Ten here. I actually have them getting half that much here. They play Hawaii, LSU, and Fresno State. Fresno State at the very end of the season, as they're out of conference there. 2 wins there. I got 2 wins there for UCLA, and they pick up another 2 along the way. I have them winning home against Indiana, and they do pick up another win, and I threw in there that they're going to beat Minnesota there. So I got them going 4-8 this year, 2-7 in the Big Ten. So under for the 4.5 projection.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule. You got LSU, Oregon, Penn State, Nebraska, who we'll talk about Nebraska and how tough they may or may not be. Iowa, USC, Washington, like it's a tough schedule.
It is. Yeah.
That being said, they bring in an excellent quarterback, Ethan Garbers. They lost Chip Kelly. They had a pretty decent defense last year, but they lost 8 starters off of that defense. It's going to be tough, in my opinion. That being said, 4.5 is pretty low, especially when you have Hawaii, Indiana, and Fresno State on the schedule. So you only need to pick up 2 more wins after that. But if you actually go and look at where you get those second wins, and your best options are Minnesota, Rutgers, and Washington, which aren't pushovers by any means. So yeah, I'm going to go under here.
Not. All right. Let's move on to Maryland. Maryland went 8-5 last year, 4-5 in the Big Ten. I think this year, they do lose Baby Tula, and I think that the lack of talent is going to show on the offense this year. UConn at Virginia and Villanova for their out of conference schedule, and I got them winning 2 of those. Wait, hold on, let me look. No, I actually got them winning all 3 of their out of conference there, but they only get to pick up 3 more in conference. My projection here, they beat Sparty, Indiana, and Northwestern to go 6-7, 3-6 in the Big Ten.
So you have them under the 6.5.
Just under that 6.5. Yes.
I think that's probably fair. Again, kind of like what we were talking about with UCLA. They have what I would say 5 pretty gimme wins.
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh, hey, I only need 2 more. And like Michigan State is very, very, very winnable, especially early in the season. That's a good draw. You get a team with a lot of turnover, second game of the season. Okay, now we're up to 6.
They may start the season going 4-0.
Kyle, I don't think it's ridiculous. And by the way, remember that Maryland, didn't they start like 5-0 last year?
Well, why are you talking? I'll look real quick.
It was either 5-0 or 6-0. Opening schedule: UConn, Michigan State, Virginia, Villanova, Indiana, Northwestern. It is totally conceivable they open up the season 6-0. Totally conceivable. That being said, they then have to play USC, who I don't think USC is great, but I think USC is better than Maryland. Minnesota, it's a very winnable game. They won't beat Oregon. I don't think they're as good as Rutgers, although they're pretty even. So I don't think they're as good as Iowa, right, and they'll lose to Penn State. But this is a really... Maryland and Rutgers, and we'll talk about Rutgers next, but Maryland and Rutgers are huge beneficiaries of the Big Ten East no longer existing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they
Maryland
both have very winnable schedules.
Last year. They did start off 5-0 last year.
Totally conceivable they go 6-0 this year. I don't think Michigan State and Virginia are total gimmies, although I think they should win both of those games.
Yep. Agreed.
I have over on 6.5. Like, you're going to win your first 6 games. I'm going to take the over on that because I think getting an upset over USC or Minnesota. I don't even think Minnesota's an upset. I think they're just roughly on par with Minnesota. I think they're roughly on par with Rutgers. They just win one of those games. We're over 6. I take my money.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I'm now that I'm looking at my projection here, and then we'll move on to Rutgers after this. Yeah, actually, yeah, it is. I got Maryland starting off 6-0, but then losing their final games there.
You have them. Right. You have them go a total slide after beating Northwestern.
Yeah. Whew. Yep. I do.
I mean, it's possible. I don't want to be like that, Kyle. That's ridiculous. Because it's not ridiculous. It's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Rutgers.
They're going to struggle. Just want to say they're going to struggle offensively, but we'll have a pretty good defense.
Mm. All right. Let's move on to Rutgers here. Rutgers 7-6 last year, 3-6 in the Big Ten. I think they'll do very similar. Their out of conference is winnable. Howard, Akron to start off the season before their bye game, and then they head on over to Virginia Tech. I don't think they'll win at Virginia Tech. At Virginia Tech is always tough to play, but I do like their in conference schedule here. They do have Minnesota, they do have Maryland and Illinois and Michigan State here. I think Rutgers will actually be a decent team.
Yeah.
I still think there's teams that will have a worse record and actually be better than Rutgers, but Rutgers' schedule is very favorable for them. I actually got them. You have 6.5 here. I got them 7-5.
Yeah, I think 7-5 is probably the correct answer. I think they have 3 gimmies on the schedule: Howard, Akron, Illinois. But the thing is, I don't have them as they're absolutely going to lose that game anywhere on their schedule. Mm-hmm. Nowhere on their schedule am I saying that's a loss. I categorized all of the schedules into wins, losses, and maybes. And I leaned heavily into the maybes. They are 3 wins and the rest are maybes. So Rutgers has a huge spectrum of where they could finish this season. a storyline I wrote for this one, Greg Schiano looks to take advantage of the dissolvement of the Big Ten East and an overall weak schedule to take Rutgers to the next level with a flawed but solid team.
Fair enough. All right, let's talk about
taking the over, by the way. I don't know if I actually said it.
All right. Let's talk about the second newcomer here for the Big Ten. Washington 14-1 last year, coming up short in that national title game here. And totally different team if you haven't been paying attention to the offseason here. Going to be a totally different season here. You have here
both of last year's
6.5 in the over-under when they went 14-1 last year. Yeah. And it just I totally understand why, but just hearing that.
Yeah. Both Michigan, the two teams in the national title game last year, Michigan and Washington, neither team is recognizable.
No.
Neither team is recognizable.
Washington did get out from the transfer portal, Will Rogers from Mississippi State.
Sure.
See how he does over at Washington, but they're in for a rude awakening coming into the Big Ten here. I think it's kind of 50-50 in my opinion. I think they'll get some wins, but then they're going to get some tough games as well too. Like they do play Penn State, they do play Michigan and Iowa, some of the tougher teams in the Big Ten here. It's like,
but they also get Northwestern, Indiana, yep. UCLA. Mm-hmm. I have this team, and I'm higher on Washington than I think most prognosticators are. I acknowledge that, but I have them having 6 solid wins. And with it being 6.5, I think they can pick up another win somewhere. Weber State, Eastern Michigan, Washington State, Northwestern, Indiana, UCLA are all just solid wins in my opinion. And at that point, you just need to pick up one additional win. I think Michigan's a toss-up. I think Rutgers is a toss-up. Iowa would be an upset, but I don't think it would be a huge upset. I think USC's a toss-up. Yeah. And they have no business winning against Penn State or Oregon, but hey, they beat Oregon twice last year. Granted, totally different team out of Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. I got them 8-4. I got them 8-4 this year.
Yeah.
Their four losses being Iowa, USC, Penn State, and Oregon.
Needs to be said, DeBoer no longer with this team. The entire coaching staff went with him to Alabama.
Totally unrecognizable team. Yeah.
Penix is gone. Kyle points out they bring in Will Rogers from Mississippi State, but it's a totally different team than the Huskies we saw last year.
Yep. All right, let's move on to the Fighting Fickles over at Wisconsin. They went 7-6 last year. 7-6, 5-4 in the Big Ten here. And Luke Fickell's first year. So this is the second year at Wisconsin here.
Which also, by the way, feels weird.
I feel like this is a very average.
Does it feel like Fickell's been at Wisconsin longer than this being his second year?
This feels like this feels like it's a very average, maybe below average Wisconsin team that we've typically usually see here. Very favorable. Well, 2 of their out of conference are very favorable. Western Michigan and South Dakota. Then they do play Alabama in week 3.
Kyle, I said
home against Alabama.
I said that I went through all of these schedules and I marked easy wins, easy losses, and the rest got the in between. Call me crazy. I marked Alabama as an in between.
Calling you crazy right now, Jared. Stop it.
I marked Alabama as an in between. Do I think Wisconsin is that good? No, I don't. That being said, Alabama has had an entire coaching staff turnover. They had a pretty large amount of player turnover. A lot of the times, these talent-rich teams look incredibly human when they're trying to put in a new system. Maybe it gets a little bit cold on September 14th.
Not that cold, Jared. Not that cold.
But maybe a little bit cold on September 14th. You don't know. You don't know what listen, it's just one day, Kyle. It's just one day. You just need one day of cold.
But
I'm just saying, it's not ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's not totally ridiculous.
6.5. I'm just going to move on. 6.5 is the over under here. I got them under. Going 5-7. They got some tough games.
They do.
We mentioned Alabama. They play USC. They play Penn State and Iowa and Oregon and Nebraska.
They do avoid Ohio State.
They do avoid Ohio State.
They avoid Michigan. Not that I think that's necessarily a huge deal this year. I think they have 4 easy wins in Western Michigan, South Dakota. Well, South Dakota's not that easy of a win.
Northwestern,
South Dakota's not that easy of a win, if we're being honest. You can't. Holy crap, Kyle! Hold on. Actually, let's stop and think about this for a second. That's the Jackrabbits, right? I'm not mistaken on that. It's the South Dakota Jackrabbits. That's a really good FCS team. With them hosting Bama the next week, they need to show up to that South Dakota game with their heads on straight and not looking forward to Alabama. If they get caught sleeping because Alabama is showing up next week, Jackrabbits will make them pay for it. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
That's a good FCS team. That being said, 4 solid wins. In order to surpass the over-under, I'd need an additional 3 wins, which is possible, but difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go under. I think talent-wise, the team's just very average outside of their offensive line, which is pretty good. They do have a pretty good offensive line. But the rest of the team's just pretty damn average.
Yep. All right, we're going to take our second ad break real quick, and we'll finish up the rest of the Big Ten teams here. So, we'll be right back.
Kyle, I was going to totally float past that one. Thank you. Nebraska's up next.
Nebraska is up next here.
Nebraska's all over the place as far as prediction goes. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of Nebraska hype right now.
There is, yeah. They play UTEP, Colorado, and North Iowa, which is an FCS team as they're out of conference. All winnable games. There. I know
then they have an incredibly favorable Big Ten poll.
Very, very. And that's why you see this range for Nebraska of their over, under, and wins all over the place. Seen them as low as like 6.5, 7.5. Seen them as high as even 10.5.
Bet River, which is not a casino I'm familiar with, but I just was doing my research for the show. A online casino, maybe they have a physical location. I don't know. I don't care. But Bet River has their over under currently Nebraska's over under currently at 10.5, which is ludicrous. Until you actually start to look at the schedule. I have them, Kyle. Again, they got a really easy Big Ten poll schedule wise. I have them having 6 easy wins on their schedule. They have 6.
Yes.
We talked about those bottom 4 teams. Remember those bottom 4 teams? Nebraska got 3 of them.
Oh, yeah.
They also got UCLA, who's not that good. That is 6 easy wins. I think they can beat Colorado. I think they're perfectly capable of beating Rutgers. I think that they can very easily beat USC.
Wisconsin.
I think that they are totally competitive with Wisconsin. I think they're totally competitive with Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
They
you want to hear my projection?
They
with
could very easily only lose one game in the regular season. They're playing Ohio State.
That is crazy. That is crazy to think about.
I'm not saying they will for the record.
They went 5-7 last year. 5-7 last year. 3-6 in the Big Ten. Flip that. They're going to go 6-3 in the Big Ten, finishing 9-3 overall for the regular season.
Who are the 3 Big Ten losses in your opinion?
Ohio State, at USC, actually all of them are at Ohio State, at USC, at Iowa.
Which I think is one is totally possible. I'm not going to be like, Kyle, no way. That's totally possible. Because if I look at those last 3 games, which are USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa, I think 2-3 is a pretty, it's a very possible outcome. But I also think 1-3 is a pretty possible outcome. Here's the problem. Nebraska's a lot of hype right now. Considerable amount of hype. Second year for Matt Rule. As second year's magic year for the coach. Not that we gave Wisconsin that, but they have more talent issues than Nebraska has right now. They have a pretty veteran defense, and they have a 5-star, granted true freshman, but 5-star quarterback, Dylan Raiola. Ohio State fans, you would know that Dylan Raiola was committed to Ohio State for an extended amount of time. Pretty decent defense, a inexperienced quarterback, but a very talented quarterback. I don't know if they have the skill players outside of Thomas Madone, who's their tight end, who is very good. I don't know what they have offensively around Raiola to support a true freshman quarterback. Is my big knock on Nebraska, and why I think that the hype has gone too far. I would not take them at 10-5. I would definitely do 10-5 under. 7-5, I'm going over.
Yeah, I agree. I already said I think I see 9 wins there, but yeah,
I would say it's 8 or 9.
Definitely a step forward. Definitely a step forward from last year.
I would say it's 8 or 9. Yeah.
USC 7.5 wins.
7.5.
They were 8-5. They were 8-5 last year, 5-4 in the Pac-12. Looking at their schedule, they start off a neutral game against LSU. I just realized
I think
LSU.
But
LSU plays USC and UCLA this year.
Yeah, LSU's schedule is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But in this new era of college football we're in, there's an added emphasis specifically to the conference schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Utah State and Notre Dame are the other 2 non-conference games there.
Mm-hmm. I don't really have a good read on Notre Dame this year, to be honest with you. So I don't have a good read on Notre Dame.
Yeah, same here. So looking at the games here, it is tough to figure out who this USC team is, because they are without Caleb Williams, new to the Big Ten. Defense is still shaky. I mean,
well, the defense is brand new, which just adds to the mystery of it. Brand new coaching staff. Alex Grinch was fired last year. They brought in I think really good hires, by the way, on the defensive coaching staff. They brought in a bunch of transfers for the defensive side. So the defense, Jared, who knows? Quarterback. No, as Kyle pointed out, Caleb Williams is gone. They still have Zachariah Branch, who's an excellent wide receiver. They have a pretty good offensive line, nothing crazy. And then on the defensive side, it's a bunch of new faces. So it's a bit of a mystery, USC.
Mm. Will you call me crazy, Jared, if I say that okay. that USC will only have 2 losses in conference.
Only 2. So Penn State.
So I have USC going 8-4 this year. I have their losses being LSU.
Okay.
At Michigan. Penn State. And where's the last one? In Notre Dame.
So it's only 1 loss in conference.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said 2 losses. I said 2 losses in conference, Michigan and Penn State, and then they lose to LSU, Notre Dame out of conference.
I forgot we already counted Penn State as a given. My bad. I don't think they lose to Michigan.
Okay.
And I also think
they do play Wisconsin.
I think Nebraska gives them a run for their money.
Yeah, I think so too. Mm-hmm.
I think Michigan. It just depends upon.
I only gave the win to Michigan because it is at Michigan. This will be the first time that USC will be playing a Big Ten in their very first Big Ten conference game.
Yeah,
heading on over to Michigan here. I will give the edge to Michigan there.
I'm going to go
just because of Michigan's defense. Will just USC is going to be all out of whack on the offense there to start the season here. They play LSU. They're going to be non-existent there. They're going to fix some things against Utah State, but they're going to have a nice warm welcome to the Big Ten when they come to Michigan and still find out that they can't do anything offensively.
Well, don't forget that Michigan will be coming off of a Texas ass whooping at that point in time too.
That's true. So I have it over.
Well, they have Arkansas State in between, but whatever. I'm going to go under just because USC feels like a mystery to me. So I'm just going to go. Sure. I'm just going to err towards 500.
All right. We mentioned previously with some teams having very favorable schedules.
Yeah.
I think Iowa has a very, very favorable schedule here. 8-5 is their over-under. I'm smashing that over. Have them going 10-2. Have them going 10-2, 7-2 in conference here. Illinois State, Iowa State, and Troy is their out of conference. 3 wins there.
You say 7.2. I think they score a grand total of like 72 points this year on offense. Like, I mean, here's the storyline I wrote for Iowa. A familiar refrain: Iowa's defense is stacked, but their offensive cupboard looks empty.
Mm-hmm. Well, look at the teams here.
If you think firing Baby Ferentz was going to fix the issues, if you think bringing in a backup Michigan quarterback was going to fix their offensive issues, you are sadly mistaken. Their offense will continue to be garbage this year. Their defense, stacked. Some of maybe the best linebacker core in the Big Ten. Really good defensive back. Their offensive line is even kind of shaky.
But look at who they play.
I know their schedule sucks.
Almost everybody.
They have 6 easy wins.
Does not have a good offense, so they're going to struggle scoring against Iowa here. Win against Minnesota. They'll lose on the road to Ohio State. I got them winning Washington, beating at Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, UCLA, Maryland. But their second loss I got to Nebraska at the end of the year. So those are the 2 losses I have for Iowa: is at Ohio State and home to Nebraska.
I hear you on that, and I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I think they could lose to Wisconsin or Maryland as well. Like, they're just so bad on offense. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the incredibly favorable schedule. I hear you on that, and so that's why I'm probably going
8.5.
I'm probably going to join you but they're not that good. They're not a 9-win team, except that it's totally feasible that they'll win 9 games.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to Michigan here. Fresno State, Texas, Arkansas State are their 3 out of conference games.
Win, loss, but not in that order.
2-1. 2-1. Okay. They are projected, or over under is 8.5. I think that's a really good number. I'm gonna take the under just based on their schedule here. I got wins over Fresno State, Arkansas State, USC, Minnesota, at Illinois, Michigan State, at Indiana, and Northwestern. So I got their 5 losses there to Texas, at Washington, Oregon, and Ohio State. Am I missing one somewhere in there?
I think they also lose to USC personally, but we've already disagreed on that when we were talking about USC.
Yeah.
I think this is a 500 football team. I'm going under hard. There's no chance they hit 8, let alone 9 wins. They're going to get embarrassed by Texas. I think they lose to USC. I think they lose to Washington. I even feel like Michigan State's in play only because it's as late in the season as it is. Kyle, I know we don't have the bandwidth in this episode to talk about it. There's a guillotine over the head of this team right now, with pending incoming coaching suspensions, I don't think there'll be any player suspensions, but there's a guillotine hanging over this team's neck right now. If you were to take Michigan at 8.5 without some sort of safety net of, hey, if any of the coaches get fired or suspended or whatever, the bet becomes null. You'd be crazy, in my opinion. Their offense is Donovan Edwards and Colston Loveland. That's about it. They did bring in Josh Preby from Northwestern to help make up for the 6 drafted offensive linemen that they lost. So in their defense, as we've talked about we did an entire episode, I think back in February, which for the most part holds true still. If you want to go listen to it, about why Michigan's going to be garbage this year, we did an entire episode on it months ago. Some things have changed since then, but I think it mostly still stands.
Mm-hmm.
I think Michigan's going to be garbage this year. I think they're a 5-5 or, a 500 football team. They lost 17 starters and most of their staff off of last year's team. 17 out of 22 starters. I think they have like 11 solid guys for the defense, but they have no answers for outside of like the safety room where they have some guys, but they have no depth for injuries, for fatigue. They are not a deep football team on the defensive side, and they're just not a good football team on the offensive side. And Michigan's a 500 football team. I'm taking the under on that hard.
Right. Penn State last year went 10-3. Their projection is, or over under is 9-5, or 9-5, 9.9.5. I'll take the over based on their schedule. Very favorable schedule in my opinion.
I agree.
At West Virginia, Bowling Green, Kent State, as they're out of conference there, but they have the draws against Illinois, UCLA, USC. I think would be tough. It is over. It is at USC. There are travel issues there, by the way. They're at Wisconsin, Ohio State, Washington, at Purdue, at Minnesota, Maryland. I think I see 2 losses here. Penn State 10-2 again, like last year. 2 losses in the Big Ten here. I have it at USC and home to Ohio State. Those are the 2 I have for Penn State this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So over would be my projection.
I agree. For the record, You got second-year Drew Aller. And the problem there is that you still have the same head coach who's proven to not be a great developer of quarterbacks, in my opinion, in James Franklin. That being said, I think they made an excellent hire at offensive coordinator, Andy Koltilnicki. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. But he, I believe, was the offensive coordinator at Kansas last year. Kansas had an excellent offense. I think that's an excellent hire. You know, they're no longer in the Big Ten East because there is no more Big Ten East. They still pull Ohio State, but they don't pull Michigan. And you add that in with the expanded playoffs. This year's Penn State's year to take the next step as a program.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, they're right there in the hunt to make it into the playoffs here.
I think if you're Penn State, you can't. To me, if you are Penn State, you have to consider yourself a playoff team now.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
That needs to be your standard if you're Penn State.
Yes. Yep. So over, Jared? Over?
Over.
All right. Oregon, 10.5. Not going to bore you here because I know that we've talked about Oregon before, and Oregon's going to be really good. Really, really good. I'm going to take the over. I think they'll go 11-1 this year, 8-1 in conference here. Very, 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 very favorable out of conference, just like Ohio State out of conference. Very favorable. Idaho, Boise State, and at Oregon State. No questions in my mind that they're a playoff team here. 11-1 is my projection.
I agree. I think they actually have the best chance of running the table in the entire Big Ten. In all honesty, more so than Ohio State. And I say that mostly because Oregon, one, doesn't have to play Penn State. And in the Ohio State versus Oregon matchup, they're in Oregon. While I think Ohio State has a better chance at the national title, I believe Oregon, y'all might get mad at me for this, will at least win the regular season of the Big Ten this year, I think, is the most likely team to win at least the regular season of the Big Ten this year. I think the Big Ten title game is Ohio State and Oregon. And I think at that point, Oregon is more, I'm not saying that they will beat Ohio State. I am saying that feels more likely than not as to what has happened. I'm giving Oregon a slight edge there. This is a great team. This team lost to Washington twice last year, both games by a field goal. Washington went on to the national title game. They didn't make the playoffs last year, but this was a playoff quality team last year. And unlike Michigan and Washington, the two teams that did end up going to the national title game, this team brings back an excellent core of players. And where they lost players, they did a great job supplementing via the portal. Like, you lose Bo Nix, okay, bring in Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma. Not saying that they won't miss a step, but it's a great pickup for them. I think that they made some, they went out and got Evan Stewart from Texas A&M. They got Jabbar Muhammad from Washington, Jamari Caldwell from Houston. It wasn't like a big splash portal outside of Gabriel, obviously. But I think Oregon is excellent. I think they're excellent. Yeah, that's it. I think that I'm going to go over on 10.5.
You got them going undefeated?
I mean,
because I said I got them going 11-1, but winning the Big Ten.
The Ohio State game is a toss-up, in my opinion. I do favor them slightly at this point in time. When it comes to the week of October 12th, I might change my mind. But at this time, if I were forced to do a full projection, yeah, I'm picking Oregon to going undefeated. A regular season, obviously. I think they're the most likely team in the Big Ten to go undefeated.
Yep. All right. And Ohio State, 10.5 over under. I got the over. 11-1. I won't bore you in details. Their one loss is against Oregon.
Yeah, which again is a toss-up game. And even if they beat Oregon, they have to go to Penn State to play Penn State, which is a tough football game. I do not see this Ohio State team. I don't want to say that. I can foresee them going undefeated in the regular season. I can foresee that. I wouldn't put a great deal of money on it, though. Okay. I think between Oregon and Penn State, two of the best teams in college football this year. I mean, there are three teams. Again, we're not doing a tier list, but to me, if you were doing a tier list, the 3S teams would be Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State. Ohio State has to play both of those other teams. This is a tough draw for Ohio State as far as Big Ten schedule. Because of that. And by the way, the stretch, Kyle, look at this stretch. Iowa, who Ohio State is better than, but they can't be thinking that going into that game. Then Oregon, then a bye week. Nebraska, Penn State. That's their October. Their October is Iowa, home Iowa, road Oregon, home Nebraska. Penn State's actually November 2nd. And then at Penn State. That's an incredibly tough 4-game stretch, and I'm sorry, I just don't see Ohio State coming out of it undefeated. That being said, I think they only drop one of those games, and I think they still end up in the Big Ten title game, and even if they don't, they still end up in the playoffs. And at the end of the day, if you're Ohio State, you 1 beat Michigan, you 2 win the national title. And
all right, and there we go.
Yeah, I don't care if you lose to Oregon as long as you beat Penn State and as long, because that is the added bonus of having to play both Oregon and Penn State, is that you're not going to get like screwed over by tiebreakers if it in fact is those 3 teams at the end. You will at least have the tiebreaker over the one that you did beat, if it comes down to that. So you have that in your back pocket at the very least. But yeah, it's going to be that 4-game stretch is going to be insanely difficult. And I just don't see Ohio State coming out of it undefeated, whether, because by the way, with Nebraska sitting in between Penn State and Oregon, you could beat Oregon, beat Penn State and lose to Nebraska. That is not a ridiculous statement. That 4-game stretch, I simply don't see Ohio State going 4-0 through. I just don't see it.
Yep. So I got in Big Ten here, Oregon, Ohio State, each losing 1 game, and both of them going 11-1 overall. And then I got 3 teams with going 7-2 in the Big Ten, and that's Iowa, USC, and Penn State. In my mind, there, and 2 of those 3 teams goes 10-2. So it would be a really good showing for the Big Ten this year if you got 4 teams in the Big Ten that go 10+ wins in the season.
Yeah, I mean the playoffs is going to be dominated by the Big Ten and the SEC, Big Ten and the SEC. Because like if you look over at the SEC side, Bama's not going to be the Bama that we're used to, but they're still a playoff team, especially in the 12-team era. So you're very, 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 very easily looking at Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Texas, I think are absolute shoe-in playoff teams this year on the SEC side. And I think that you at least have 3 of those teams on the Big Ten side. And depending upon how good Nebraska or USC are, you could very easily see one of those teams slip into the playoffs as well. You could also see Iowa slip into the playoffs, again, just because their schedule is garbage, not because they're actually that good. We don't want that. Mm-hmm. We don't want Iowa want to be one of our representatives in the playoffs and then get smoked.
Yeah. All right. That is it. We are way over in time here, so we're not going to waste any more time here. Anything else? Anything else you want to add on before we?
That's my job to ask you if there's anything in Kyle's corner.
Oh, yeah. Crew dominating the pitch here in the MLS, and Archie gets his statue at the Rose Bowl. That's
pretty rad. How many people have statues at the Rose Bowl? Is it?
I don't have enough time to look, so
I think it might be one. If I'm being honest, I think the answer might be one.
No, they got more.
Ah, damn.
I believe there's.
Are they football players? And are they UCLA football players? Because if they're UCLA football players, it doesn't count. Because they're not there because of the Rose Bowl. They're there because of UCLA. Did I say USC? I meant UCLA.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have time to look,
fine.
So I'll just.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Also, if there's anyone there for the Olympics, that also doesn't count. I'm talking like specifically football, specifically for the Rose Bowl. We'll figure that out later. Or, hey, if you're in the YouTube comments and you know the answer to that, let us know. Or if you're in the Discord server, discord.thesloopcast.com, let us know. If you want to buy a t-shirt, go to 7071.thesloopcast.com or merch.thesloopcast.com. I'm wearing the 7071 Cincinnati shirt right now. Kyle's not wearing merch right now. Bad Kyle.
Yep. Bad me.
But that's it. That is the end of the show. Tonight's ending music brought to you by Heart Attack Man. Heart Attack Man is out of, I forget. I'm going to say that Northeast Ohio. Maybe Akron, Canton, Kent, Cleveland. I forget. Also, I could just be totally wrong. But anyway, they're an Ohio-based band. They're called Heart Attack Man. The name of this song is Stick Up. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, this is Heart Attack Man.